Way. We are starting now. People can now hear what you say. Don't.
Hello.
Good.
All right.
Cool.
So
Let's
welcome.
start,
I guess, yeah. Aaron, you want to start?
I guess I'll start. I'm Aodan. I'm a Dauntless veteran speedrunner. Uh, been playing for about almost 3 years now, and glad to be.
Oh, I'm Lucian, semi full-time Dauntless streamer, or OG founder and player. Glad to be here.
Yeah, my name is Blocks. I am I'm what you can call a Dauntless info man, info broker. I am the wiki guardian of the Gamepedia, and the host of this show.
I'm Predelt. I've been playing for over 2 years, doing duos, speedruns with Aiden, and on and off streaming. Haven't been streaming lately, but yeah, part of the community and keep in touch. So yeah, handing it off.
What's going on? My name is Rev. I am a content creator, Dauntless partner. Been playing Dauntless for about 3 years, same as Aodan roughly. And yeah, just been part of the community for a long ass time. So
Well, that was the introductions, I guess. So should we move on to the first topic? So that would be Frostfall. And the Huntpass. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, it was kind of Sarah that wanted this on there.
Right. Do we want to maybe delay that until Sarah gets here? Or...
Well, we could.
Yeah.
I feel like most of us have something to talk about Escalation there, don't you think?
Yeah, I think Escalation's kind of like the lighthearted.
Yeah, so let's move to Escalation. So thoughts on Escalation, guys?
Step in the right direction, but still not enough. Yeah, that's my take on it. It's good, but it's the same thing 5 times in a row that we've been doing for the past 2 years. So
yeah, I felt the same way.
Double behemoths. I mean, that's nice, but yeah, not enough in my opinion.
I have a lot to say about Escalation. I'll start with the things that I do like. One thing that I like the most about Escalation is that it brought out a lot of things that just weren't considered usable. Mainly in like playing Warpike, playing the axe, like it encouraged people to experiment with things like the Skull Forge, Reckless Leap, Relentless Onslaught, and it just brought out like builds around that, I guess, and it just made it pretty fun. And another big plus is that instead of the massive reduction in loading screen times, you get 7 or what is it, 6 or 7 behemoths now, and instead of 1 and done, which is great. Things I don't like, or things I would not like to see in the future, is if there was recycled amps, and just like a lot of recycled content from going from the lightning escalation to the fire escalation. I think that would be a really big turnoff to pretty much anyone who participated in this season. So I can see like a massive failing if they manage to somehow do that in the next one. But yeah, no, I'm in agreement. I do think that Escalation suffers from the same thing that just the base game of Dauntless suffers from, which is the redundancy. Everything is so samey. It's a nice step in the right direction, but we need more, and there's a chance of failing in the next season.
To touch on amps and the skill tree, I personally feel that there most of the amps, I mean, some of them are cool, but all of the most of them, a majority of them are just damage increasing perks or attack speed increasing perks, or yeah, like I that that kind of stuff is feels so uncreative to me, and completely boring. Like
Right. Yeah.
we could use more call we could use more variety and more unique things in the perk tree, because that's what they should be using it for. I feel to test new perks that you probably wouldn't feel comfortable just putting into the game, like plopping it into the game otherwise, which is why they should use the opportunity to use escalation as a platform to experiment with crazy new ideas, and then if it works, then you can implement it into the game afterwards and go from there. But they're kind of just playing it a little bit safe and using like just damage perks, attack speed perks with, oh, you have to do X thing for this to activate. Wow, not like we haven't had that before, right? I mean,
Right. Or it's
it's
like thrill of the hunt, where you just get more damage over time by just playing the game, and it's like,
yeah,
yeah.
it's boring. I hate that. It's so boring. I want more creativity out of them, and it sucks because I know that they can do better than that, but maybe they're just spreading their resources thin, and that's why they're unable to really come up with like anything new or interesting to add to the park economy.
Well, I I think you bring up something that kind of affects the entire game as a whole in terms
Yeah,
of
that
resources and spreading the team thin, which has caused a lot of things to not quite live up to the hyper expectations that players invested into the game are kind of hoping for. Um, with escalation, I agree with Revi and everybody that it brings a lot of weapons that you know, aren't really seen in trials, aren't typically used by the mass populace, be relevant and good in escalation. And I think escalation's a great, like, fun in-game loop to really enjoy and play. I know most of us that have streamed, we've really enjoyed, interacting with our communities and helping them get through escalation. And it's fun, but like you said, like a lot of the stuff kind of falls short in either it's just a passive DPS gain or it doesn't really create a dynamic expansion to the combat. Um, I definitely see escalation as a way for them to kind of explore possible bonuses in the future or possible unique effects that we might be able to see in the future. I think escalation is a great way for them to kind of test the water and see if it's good or not. Um, like for example, the what are they called? The Eldilons or whatever. I think those were actually
Eidolons.
Eidolons. I think they were actually pretty interesting. And there's multiple different ways to activate them. Are they good? Not really, but at least they're interesting. They're a different way to approach how you engage in combat, even though it's still pretty passive. Um, but stuff such as like critical domain and the fact that a lot of the bonuses, a lot of the good bonuses at least, are affected by crit, which crit really isn't seen outside of escalation. So that was a way to make crit relevant. And I think that's a great way of pushing the relevancy and bringing stuff in the game that's not really used that much to be something to use in escalation. But overall, yeah, I agree that stuff has fallen to be too much passive DPS gains rather than something that really changes the combat flow.
Hmm. Yeah. Um. I mean, I don't. I like as far as mm, like perks go in this game. It's like nobody, we've mentioned this before, nobody builds anything other than damage and attack speed and a little bit of utility. And like uh going forward, I would definitely like to see them really shake it up, not just through not just by like introducing new and interesting unique perks into the economy, but by creating encounters or game modes that really force you to change up your playstyle. You can't just build straight damage or straight attack speed and go and just like unga bunga your way to victory, right? So yeah,
Uh,
I like to
if
see
I
it.
could play devil's advocate, because I totally agree, and I think Lucian brought up a really good point. Is that I think one of the biggest hindrances of Dauntless is the one dimensionality of builds. Like like you said, you just build damage, attack speed, and some support, and then there's another group of players that probably do the same thing, but instead of the support, they build Iceborne, something like that. Like, but for the most part, everybody's going to have one or two perks that are overlapping in however you play, just because they're so good and it's just mathematical. The thing that I want to say is I would argue that if they did some highly experimental perks that they weren't sure like if they were going to be successful, I think the surefire way to make sure the launch of Escalation was successful is like like big numbers, right? Like I think that added to a lot of the spectacle and the wow factor of the launch, that the first impression of Escalation was, hey, this is pretty fun because virulent impact and duelist, what's it called, duelist precision, I believe, the thing that just builds up crit, allows for
Mm.
like insane axe numbers and stuff like that, while the glitz and the glam is kind of worn off now because we've done it hundreds of times, based on who you are. The the Yeah, just that wow factor is worn off, and we're done with the grind. But I do think that adding starting kicking it off with like a big damage hit would have definitely factored into its success. But I want to see uh more testing. I agree with Aodin that I think that testing perks and Escalation would be great. And I do want them to explore more playstyles. And honestly, going even further beyond and outside of Escalation, I just don't really like the cell perk system, and I would really hope that a different armor structure would be implemented, but I don't know how feasible that is.
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably touch upon this later, but definitely when talking about cells and stuff like that, is that they're so potent that not having the damage you're doing, we've discussed this many times in the past, but you're dealing more than 2 or 3 times more damage than someone else that's not using like the damage cells that like overpower by itself, boosting your damage a huge amount for just doing what you're supposed to. And we all know that people think that without the attack speed perks that they feel like they're too slow. So I don't know if maybe we can increase the base attack speed across the board and reduce the cell potency, but that's the direction I've generally been thinking that it should be going.
I mean, I have ideas on how to counteract stuff like that, but that's not on topic, so I'll leave that till free talk. Um, I will say that I do like that they put in a really good cosmetic armor set for free, just for playing the mode, which is great. That's one of the better things that Escalation brought to the table, and I hope to see more of that in the future. And
Oh yeah, did we mention how you get 50 more armor and you get 50 more power and resistance from your lantern from doing escalation, even though we don't really need it. It's kind of like been not really sitting very well with me. Is now we have 50 more power, even though, I mean, sure, there's some people that could find it useful, but overall, it's just adding to the power creep.
Does it carry over into other
It does.
modes?
Yeah, the 50 off the lantern does. So you gain power every time you pick an amp, and you also gain power just from passively doing and leveling up your talent tree. But the only thing that carries over into the base game is the lantern power.
Actually,
As far as like power creep goes, totally agree. I do think that we'll see a reduction. I think that we're gonna see more nerfs. If I had to wager, they
Just-
haven't. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just I just want to say, anybody else sick and tired of seeing strikers on the board now?
Let's save that for the trial section.
Yeah.
I think
Wait,
with
is there a trial section?
the lanterns,
Yeah.
there's one odd thing, which is that they don't count towards quests right now. So I've already had a couple of users report to me that they are unable to complete their quest because the menu says they have enough power or defense and they don't.
Huh.
So that has been quite weird. And as far as I understand it, it is resetting every single time. So you will need to do it every time a new escalation comes out.
Right.
However, that is up for changes as far as I'm aware. Like I've heard devs go back and forth on that one, so not by any means set in stone. It's just that's something I've heard recently. I think that may be something we need to factor into this because it does mean every single time a new escalation comes out, that trial may actually get harder to compete in because you would get a benefit from leveling your lantern.
Sarah, do you want to quickly introduce yourself? Everyone else did, so didn't know if you
Oh,
wanted to.
right. Yes. Hi, Sarah Leaf here. I am one of the moderators on the Reddit and the Discord, and I play too much Dauntless, just like literally everybody here, probably.
Yeah.
I've completed the game in pretty much all ways possible, so I should have a good
Check.
say on what's happening.
Everybody here maxed all Macarian gear.
I'm almost
Oh.
done. Pierre the Storm plates.
Got 2 weapons.
I haven't done any.
I've maxed everything.
Besides the
inside.
dynamic carabiner or carabine,
I
that's
got-
the only one.
Yeah, I got everything to +10, and then the gloves to +15, and then I have 2 +15 Malk weapon.
God.
Sword
Oh,
because
so I'm
sword's
the
fun,
only
and
one.
hammer.
So I'm the only one with all +15. Okay.
No, I have everything. I have
Yeah.
everything. I'm working on Malkir. Like that's the only thing left I have is the mastery card.
Oh, okay. Never mind then.
The mastery card is a bitch to do.
Yeah, it is.
You're telling me.
I maybe we can slightly transition away from escalation because I think Lucian brought up a really good point about the cosmetic armor, and I can really segue this into the hunt pass because on the flip side of like a great cosmetic set from escalation, I really feel like the Frostfall hunt pass really fell short this in multiple ways, and I know I know that some people here have a lot to say about the trial marks being included, and so I'm gonna leave that out. But for me, the big like oof is the ultra armor from the hunt pass feels like they really just added a recolor, and yeah, that doesn't sit well with me because it does seem like the Malkarian armor set got the love and it like the TLC it required, but here we are. And if you're gonna just recolor something, you can't have a dye system. If you're
110%.
yeah, I mean it just doesn't do anything for me. If my armor's looking the same, if I can dye the base armor set and have it look like the ultra armor set, I don't care, you know. And so to me it seemed really lazy, and so yeah, that's like a really big negative for this season's hunt pass. I think they could have gone way more the bounties that they added for this season, great. Not really I think they've factored into escalation really well. I think escalation is great for completing the hunt pass for the people that don't have a lot of time to play. I feel like everybody can kind of go into a easier version of escalation and get their hunt pass done, no problem.
I think
Yeah.
to some extent the Huntpass is weird anyway. Sort of as somebody who's been content ever since I got the Overgrowth set. I have just been buying the passes because the benefits are too great. Like I just want the XP, I want the resources, right? And
Do you
they've
think
been
that's
adding
good or
more and
bad?
more resources to the pass, which has been kind of weird. Like it feels really weird to buy a pass and then hear everybody say, "Well, the cosmetics are horrible," and I'm like, "Yeah, but I never bought it for the cosmetics. They're sort of tagged onto it." Um,
But
I'm
the
not sure if
main
Right.
anyone else
feature
has
of
that.
the pass is the cosmetics. Like why I don't buy them. I don't buy passes just to get the fucking pots or like what? Why?
Actually, that is a good point, though. I bought the Hunt Pass now that I think about it because it gave you the bonus drops because it
Oh
does
yeah,
give
I
you those
mean,
couple like
yeah,
support breaks,
yeah.
and
Bonus drops are nice. Yeah.
it had a nice blue dye, but I didn't really care about the armor.
Like you can't even like the worst part is you can't even color the golden bits of the ultra armor away, and I'm like, why? Why is it still like this? Why don't we have a fourth die slot? What the fuck, Phoenix? That's
Fourth, I don't know about that. We're
They're
asking for
barely
I
what?
using
think
the third one. They forget it like half the time that it exists. So please don't make it harder on them.
I just think that, yeah, I mean, I think just changing die channels is a pretty lazy way to call it an ultra armor. As far as like the value of the hunt pass, I think everybody could agree here that like regardless of what you buy it for, it's worth it, right?
yeah.
Yeah, because
Definitely.
yeah.
it's like $10, but you get $5 back, so it's $5 really. So
Yeah, for
Wait,
for
no.
$5, like I personally loved all the weapon skins for this Hunt Pass, and that's what sold me on purchasing the Hunt Pass. The armor, quite honestly, I really didn't care for it. But my big thing with these Hunt Passes is that they give a lantern that matches the weapon skins, and they did that this Hunt Pass, which is great. Previous Hunt Passes, they haven't done that, where the lantern doesn't really thematically go with the weapon skins. But there was, the biggest issue I had with the Hunt Pass obviously was the steel marks. Um, I feel that normal trials is at a level where it is completely doable by almost any skill of player as long as they do the grind for the gear and they have a basic understanding of the combat mechanics. Um, I don't feel that steel marks were gated so much that they needed to add it into the hunt pass. And I also don't think that players shouldn't have access to those marks prior to unlocking trials. Um, but also, those steel marks go towards actual power creep and progression systems. And you could easily argue that that is pay to win.
I find it a very interesting
I
argument to say that the tokens should not be given to players before they unlock trials. I hadn't even considered that, to be completely fair.
um I feel like if all right, I mean, if they want to put silver marks in the past, just move all of them up to the free track. Don't fucking put them
Yeah,
in the
if
paid
it
one.
was in the free track, then it wouldn't really be a pay to win situation. It would just be, hey, put in the effort into the game and you'll get it. But when they put it just on the premium pass, that's what kind of took me back.
Yes. I've always had an issue with them put like even like cell cores and shit, you know? Like I mean, yeah, I mean a lot of people will probably say, "Oh, but you get a shit ton of cell cores anyways or cells from just playing the game." But like I mean, still like that cells have an effect on the game and give you power. So technically, you can also argue that that is also pay to win, but nobody ever cares because, well, I mean,
Well,
they
so the big thing with pay to win is I think pay for progression, as long as the progression doesn't greatly outpace the general play. So, like, for example, with the middleman, you could buy overly priced cells, but you can also get them fairly quickly. There's no real need, not to mention the availability of Aether Dust. There's no real need to buy it unless you just, hey, you're bummed on your week, you don't have the thing, or you're brand new to the game, you don't want to miss out on a overpower +3 cell on sale, so you pay platinum for it. In the large scheme of things, it doesn't matter. And as long as that doesn't matter, or it's not like a significant increase, then I think it's acceptable. And I don't think it really crosses the threshold of pay to win. You could still call it that, but I don't really think it has that effect. For me, pay to win is when, like, say you pay to do something and that cuts down for 6-8 hours of game time. That's pretty significant. But if it's like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hour difference, that's not a big deal. You look at a game like Black Desert Online, where if you pay real money to get gear and stuff or buy stuff off the auction house, you're talking about months of grinding difference. That's when it's unacceptable.
Yeah, but well, all I'm saying is that, like, I personally feel like it would be better. It would look better for them and for the game as a whole if they just moved all the power affecting stuff up to the free track and fill in all those empty levels so that A, they don't look fucking bad, and B, they make free players feel like they have stuff that don't feel bad for, like, landing on, oh, this is I leveled on my Huntpass, but I'm on an empty level slot. So just move out all the silver marks and cores onto the empty slots, and then we don't have a problem.
Totally
And
agree.
maybe fill in, like if, like, you have to fill in the void for, like, those cores or whatever in the premium pass, and just, I don't know, put in like a lazy cosmetic or like a sigil or a banner fabric or whatever, something like that. But yeah.
I'd argue that, like, and I'm for the record, I'm in agreement. Like, I'm not really big on uh the silver marks being on the paid track. My reason for, like, what I told myself and what I was and this was kind of pitched to me as an idea. I was like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Is like, okay, Switch just launched. Trials are definitely a game mode. It's, Christmas, holiday break, and like a lot of people are playing Dauntless. And it's like, the console players, to me, I saw the silver marks as like a catch-up mechanic. But the fact that they're in the paid track, like you guys said, is like really really scuffed. I think that that's why the silver marks were put there, is because it would give players that just started a chance to compete if they wanted to. But yeah, it was incentivized to pay money, which I think is not a good look. And I mean, monetization is on the on what we're going to be talking about, and I think we're kind of bleeding into that. But
Yeah,
yeah, I think overall the Frostfall Hunt Pass, it raised a lot of eyebrows, and it wasn't hitting the mark for what we expect from a free battle pass or a paid battle pass.
I think to some extent you're right. I'm also inclined to say that it is not even so much uh, a catch up that you need, right? If you're a Switch player and you are getting to the point of trials, you will get this quest, which is going to give you bonus steel marks, which is pretty much all you need to make the meta build you of your choice, right? Um, and from there on out, every week you're gonna get 300 of them, which is 2 cells. Like that's gonna be easy from there on out. So I would argue that marks as a catch-up mechanic. You don't actually need them. I think it's fine that they're there because honestly, any endgame player at this point really doesn't need more of them. But I most certainly
heavily
wouldn't call
disagree
them
with that.
a
I think
huge
that
power spike.
I think that a lot of people don't even participate in trials or know they maybe even they exist. So giving them an opportunity to get some of that power and get them to play with some of the new specials, they'll be like, oh, how do I get more of these? Right? It's kind of like the gateway. And you're also assuming that everybody's getting sub threes on normals, which I don't think a lot of people are.
But so here's my thing with that, to touch on it very quickly. Why?
Oh,
It breaks down to three reasons why they aren't completing sub 3 normal trials. And the fourth reason is the outliers. That's the people with really bad connections or have a disability or some type of issue that is preventing them from executing to complete it. But 90% of the player base can do normal trials, but it breaks down to three things. Either one, they're not using a good build. Two, they're not refining their techniques and they're not actually putting effort into playing the game. Or three, they're not asking the questions, whether it's in the Discord, whether it's on the Reddit, whether it's on Twitch, Mixer, wherever. They're not asking the questions to get that information.
I mean, it's really well to us. It might seem not difficult at all, to get a sub 3 in normal trials. You'd be surprised how many people come to ask me to help them with normal trials.
Yeah, I was gonna say that there are the people that are not getting it and are not asking questions, and there are people that are getting it that are have a rough time understanding the fights conceptually, but just asking for someone to carry them through it. So it's kind of yeah.
Yeah,
Weird.
I think there's a big. I mean, this is totally like out of the scope of this podcast, but like, and what we were trying to set out to do. But I think that's just like a thing that is in the modern gamer. It's like instant gratification, right? Participation awards. It's like gaming isn't what it used to be. We used to have to scour the internet for maybe a guide on a build, right? It's not like that anymore. And so the want to get information and the expectation that information is accurate has skyrocketed significantly, and so that just leads to laziness. And I totally agree that they're probably not putting in the work, but at the same time, I don't think that normal trials, even by our standards, are something that should be left for the elite to complete only and get those sub threes. And I think everybody should be able to play with all the different specials and stuff. So
yeah, you should definitely
like,
get normal. Yeah.
So as far as like the marks go, like I do think it's scuffed that it's paid. But am I against them being there? Not really. I would like to see them either maybe less marks or something, maybe just like a little boost. And have it branched out over months, but like the amount that we got on the paid track was so scuffed. Like, yeah, I don't know how that was okayed, but
I mean, it
anyway.
may have to do with the repeaters releasing as well.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good blanket cover. Like, but yeah, I mean that was just such a questionable decision, and we'll probably go over that in monetization.
Yeah. I'm like, I was trying to mention it without starting a discussion.
Yeah. I would. I mean, I think it would be. I think we've.
Yeah, let's move on.
I think we've. Okay, so probably one that you vets are going to be excited to talk about are the UI. Thoughts on that one?
I'll let everybody else go first before I add to it.
Before you come in with the
Where
chaos.
to begin?
Yeah.
Where to begin? Oh, let's start with the elephant in the room. It's too fucking big.
Yeah. Quite literally an elephant.
Yeah. Quite literally. It's too big. It's like super like I have to I mean, I don't even know, man. Yeah, I yeah, it's like it's taking up like a quarter of my screen and I'm like, what the fuck? I can't concentrate on the fight because like I'm like it's blocking like almost like most of the top left side of my screen, and I'm like, come on, like I should be able to resize this shit, right? I mean, I like that they made the lantern and the lantern UI more clear, and that was a nice change. Um, and updated the weapon UIs to match with the new one and the HP bar and the standard bar. I think that was nice. I just wish that I could maybe shift some of the elements around to make it a little bit easier for me to see what I want to see or see the information I want to see without like having to like drag my eyes all the way to the left corner and then be greeted with such an enormous fucking UI that I just
I do have to
that's
say, I like that we're getting numbers now in the UI. I like seeing my health. I like seeing my stamina. It's all
yeah.
clearly visible for me to see, and I can finally understand that if a cell gives me, let's say, 20 max stamina, how much that actually is on my bar, right? That gives me good information to work with. So I really enjoyed that section of the changes. Um, but I'll agree that like literally any other UI change we have had, it comes with some very big question marks. Um, I think things that jump to mind are obviously the hammer one, right? Where your hammer reload is at the bottom of your screen. So now suddenly I have to quickly move my eyes from the top left, where I'm looking 90% of the game, to the bottom center, which is super weird. Um, and also things like the lantern glow being so bright that I cannot see whether or not my lantern is instantly charged again, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah. That's
That-
so bad.
yeah, I agree. The lantern like effect is so heavily saturated, and it does linger for a long time. I think that's like one of the biggest flaws of the practicality of the new UI.
yeah. I think that's that would be my main argument. Is like I think it's in general a slight step up from what we used to have. Now that I've used it for a while, I do think it's too large, but I'm a PC user. Everything is too large in Dauntless. But I also think there's definitely points where I feel like with just a small change, that the UI will be significantly better. Um,
Uh, I wish we
yeah,
could customize our UI, honestly.
We also didn't talk about how they brought behemoth health bars into the UI now.
I was keeping
I
that one
like
out of it
them.
for a bit. I
I
hate them.
mean, yeah, I mean, I kind of kind of like it ish. Uh, I mean, yeah, it's a monster hunting game. We all know that's not tradition to see health bars and stuff. But I mean, when I'm doing trials and now I can get a vague idea of how much damage I dealt to the thing before I died and have to restart all over again. It's useful in that aspect. But yeah, I guess like in the normal gameplay experience, it's not so uh,
Right, like
traditional
maybe
nor
for some
intuitive.
game modes it makes more sense, but for others you shouldn't be able to see it. I think that's makes sense.
Mm.
Koro says at least don't make the health bar hot.
It feels like Minecraft, honestly.
Yeah, it does.
Like,
I wouldn't have minded. Like, I don't mind the hard, but I wouldn't. The bar with numbers on would have been funnier. Sorry, English.
well,
Funny?
to me, it feels weird in general to have a health bar, because it just sort of feels like it goes against the spirit of what the game is, where I'm sort of looking at this beast, right, and I don't quite know when it's going to go down. Um,
Yeah.
but even besides that point, I think putting a health bar like this in the game just makes me wonder why we're not getting your traditional boss bar with health, with numbers above the head of the behemoth, because at that point, you may as well, right? It doesn't really matter as much anymore. I'm going to be
I
looking at the health bar anyway.
I think the big thing with that is, and I keep harping on this, is end of hunt screen and giving us actual number feedback so that players understand what they did and how they contributed to the fight. And I think if they're not willing to do that, I highly doubt they would give us like a more
that's
traditional
on the
health bar.
roadmap though. Like
Well,
like more detail.
they've
Like they've gone even more into their end of hunt screen detail on the roadmap. And
Yeah. But they
Go ahead.
say that, but we don't know exactly. I mean, we don't know exactly what that is actually going to be. Like, I've suggested since alpha that they do what Warframe does, where they just give us a percentage value. Doesn't have to like break it down. How much stagger damage did you do? How much wound damage did you do? Just give us an overall contributor percentage so that people know, oh, hey, I only did 15% of the damage in this fight. I probably should look at my build.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I think the lack of information, and this has been a running theme ever since we started playing Odin, is the lack of information and the systems that they implement because of that lack of information are totally contradictive. And I think overall it has harmed the game. But as far as the health bar goes, I feel like it's a necessary evil if we're going to be having things like at 50% this amp does X. So it like opens the doors for more like, I don't know, like weird amps, but I would sacrifice those for maintaining the hype of that first kill, right? Like, oh, we took it down, right? I think there was a lot lost in the addition of a health bar.
But
You
what
can
about
turn it off.
visuals?
I think it's worth noting that you have the option to turn it off.
But
Right.
And
game
but
is for
but
all
yeah,
information.
exactly. The information is too valuable. And like you said, like in trials, you need to know. Like you need to every little bit of information is an advantage.
Yes, exactly. And
And
I think in
also,
general.
if
Sorry, go ahead, Brent.
go on. Okay, I'll go. Even if one person on your team doesn't have it turned off, then that means everyone basically knows. So it kind of, everyone would have to be on the same page, and also just it puts you at a disadvantage if you're doing something like trials. Like you were saying, it's just kind of, since it exists at all, it means that there's no reason to have it off, really.
Yes,
Yep.
and I would argue that if anything, and this is something I've discussed with Des for a bit, that it's weird because what this does essentially with the health bar is enables buffs for the 50% health to not have visuals, because that's really the only change it's making. If it's like Predator and it just gives me like the glowing effect on my sword, it's immediately obvious that my buff has activated. So I'm not entirely sure if I buy but now we can have this effect argument.
I think I'm kind of failing to. I mean, yeah, we can. Yeah, I actually know now that I'm thinking about it a little bit more. I think I understand what you're saying, but it lets people know when those buffs are active. In a different way, I guess.
Yeah.
That might.
Yeah, it's a trade-off.
I
You could go
understand.
both ways. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And it seems like, I mean, I think there's just people that wanted a health bar, and this is like the compromise, right? It's like you can turn it off. We're gonna have it, but it's not gonna give you exactly what you want. But I think the theme for me, like, or like the philosophy I have on health bars in games like this, in action games, is that it doesn't if the behemoths were mythic raid level difficult, having a health bar is warranted. Like I think of a game like Dark Souls, right? You know how much health the bosses have, but you're still under like scrutiny, or you're under fire, right? And when that health bar is depleted, it feels good. But for people like us, when a health bar is depleted, it's just like another day. It's just okay, another behemoth down. So when a new behemoth comes out, we don't really get to savor the kill. And I think that's the big loss there. Like, I think that's a lose for everybody. Dauntless is significantly less hype in that moment because of the addition of the health bar.
Yeah, so would you argue that maybe the first time you cannot see the health bar?
That'd be interesting. Like if there was hunting notes, like in Monster Hunter, like you have to research the monster and then you get more information. I think that would be actually pretty interesting. Maybe the health bar shows up when you get all 100% mastery on a behemoth.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to that, to be fair, because at that point you could argue you already know when it's going to die. The health bar just means you have to pay less attention to sort of the signs of it.
That'd be very interesting. I don't hate that.
You'd still run into the same issue where if someone has already done it, then they can just tell you. But I guess it could, it. But yeah, generally, if you're starting with everyone else, then it would work. So I would, wouldn't be opposed to it.
Oh yeah. Quickly touching on new behemoths, I don't think we discussed Malkarion and how we feel about him. So, do you guys want to?
Yeah, I think we
quickly
could
touch-
We
backtrack.
are backtracking.
Yes.
One thing I wanted to talk about, and this could be something that just really fast since we're backtracking. I wanted to talk about like weapon speculation. I think that would be a fun topic to maybe like close out on or something.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's
Yeah,
keep
sure.
it to the free talk if it's
Sure.
Right.
So I like being dragon food. I think it's great.
yeah, like all the new mechanics he brings to the table is cool, but the issue I have, I mean, I like Malkarion as a behemoth, as a step in the right direction, and he was hard the first couple times we fought him, but you know, the issue I have with Malkarion and honestly every single behemoth in this game at the moment is that even though he brings new mechanics to the table, the mechanics are not meaningful. And what I mean by that is like you don't need to do the mechanics in order to finish the fight, which feels completely like it feels like something that's like tacked on, it's optional. Like, oh, this mechanic exists, but I don't have to do it to like kill him or break this part I want or do X thing. So like, why does the mechanic exist? That's an issue I have with their behemoth design. I just feel so like there's no meaning behind it.
Artificial.
They're just- yeah, they're just tacking on mechanics. They don't actually mean anything. So
If I could play devil's advocate again, I think that like because I do agree. I think mounting is kind of like not super great, but it does allow for weapons like the Aether Strikers, things that are like super short range to actually deal damage. I think that that's great, but I think you run into the Boreas armor problem where it's like, okay, we need to do these mechanics, but it's not very fun, and so it's a lot easier to just kind of like bypass it with like, okay, you don't need to do this, but you can do this, and I think it's a lot easier to design a behemoth without worrying, is this fight gonna be,
I mean,
widely
there's a way to design meaningful mechanics without making them unfun. I mean, like
I
in
agree.
example of Boreas, like something they probably could have done to make it a lot easier on a lot more fun for like players who are fighting him is off the top of my head, they could have say what call for every minion that gets killed, you deal damage. You deal damage to his armor instead of like, oh, you get a buff and then you have to run up and hit him, kind of thing. Like they could have just easily made the change like that. Oh, just go deal with his
Made it
minions and then
automated.
his armor. Yeah, and his
Yeah.
armor comes off.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah,
I
that's just like a simple example. I could come up with something a bit more elaborate that's more fun.
I think that would actually be like a really good change to Boreas, because like the worst part is when you have a ton of stacks, and especially this happens in Escalation all the time. Another behemoth is like right behind you, throws in an attack, but it misses, and then like all your stacks go into that behemoth, or like some of your stacks go in, and also just like it also sets the pacing of the fight, where if it summons adds early, you know that all that damage is just going to be extra on to Boreas, which is nice. I do think that actually does solve a lot of Boreas's problems. However, when it comes to like mounting and Malkarion, I feel like it is extra, and I think it was more of like a can we do mounting sort of thing, and this will be fun. It's like added for fun, not really a mechanic to make a boss fight
Yeah, I would agree with that.
difficult.
I think especially the fact that they still use sort of the vents to make you jump up, right? Like it's super clear, but at the same time, it feels so tacked on to the fight. Like why is his wings spawning random vents? What's happening here?
Yeah.
I think that sort of already tells you enough in terms of whether or not it was meant to be sort of a super serious mechanic or just something for fun. What I do think
Yeah.
is a shame is you need a ridiculous amount of wings and you cannot mount the wings. That does
Yeah.
sort of bother me. Which brings me to another part. I like that he's flying, but as somebody who is a helpless slave to playing meta strikers all day every day, I wish I could hit him like sometimes. Because most of the fight, I'm literally just running after him while he's doing stuff and not hitting anybody. Um, which feels surprisingly good, but I think in general the fight could use just I think lowering him a tiny bit where we could actually hit him would make such a difference for the fight in terms of feeling whether or not we're dealing damage or not.
Mm.
Especially on his wings. His
Yeah.
wings sometimes are just too high.
Yes.
I see. I'm a big advocate for like matchups for weapons. I hate the idea of every single weapon that exists in Dauntless having like a fair fight. And you know, the thing about strikers is for the rest of escalation, you're powering through it. And then it's just like you get to Malkarian and you kind of suck. You can mount, like go for the face, get a KO. Like it forces you to think outside of the conventional means of Aether Strikers, and that's what I like about it. Like that, what you hate is what I actually like. And the and it's not all bad because it also creates this like dynamic. It's like, all right, I don't have a really good matchup versus Malk. I'm gonna bring Adamant Bolt for when I do get that, you know, that three
there's
stack.
definitely that aspect of it, and I don't hate that aspect. I think you are right in terms of saying that that part is fun.
Yeah.
I would argue that they are they would be fine leaning a little bit more into that even. I just think the way it's presented right now is not quite to my liking. And I think it's very much a nitpick though. Like I said, I don't think it's a big problem. I wouldn't even call it a problem as much as just me personally not quite sort of one-on-one connecting with it.
Yeah.
I disagree with weapon specific fights only because the entire game should be soloable with all weapons. And yes, for like hammer and strikers, you can go for the stagger and then you could focus the wings and stuff like that. And there are options. But I think the best mediation of having a weapon have an advantage, I'm fine with a weapon having an advantage in a fight, is like Boreas and Chainblades, or Hammer and Skarn, or Striker and Skarn. There's an advantage, but it doesn't mean that you're going to do the fight significantly worse or significantly slower if you don't bring a specific weapon. But I do see that there can be some efficiency improvements or advantages in efficiency if you bring the right weapon.
Well,
But
efficiency, like I feel like if you have an advantage, you can't. I feel like it's like two sides of the same. Like you can't have an advantage and not have a disadvantage somewhere else, right? But also in the same vein, efficiency breeds like more time saved, which staying in a fight longer is a disadvantage, right?
yes, but so again, back to like Boreas, for example, with Hammer and Strikers, your goal is to get that stagger and hopefully either get that second stagger or get a head break before he goes into ice mode. Versus Chain Blades, where if he does go into ice mode, you can just 360 helicopter most of the mobs and easily get the stacks to break his armor really quickly, which we've seen in speedruns. You know, there's a clear advantage with no disadvantage. The only disadvantage for like strikers or hammers or other weapons that aren't chain blades is that we have to try and get the damage in faster before he goes into ice mode, and then we have a more difficult time slightly with breaking that ice mode.
Would you
With Malk, it's saying I feel like it's saying, hey, you got to bring chain blades or repeaters because a hitbox is too high. I don't think that should be differential in balance or differential in giving that advantage. It should be a mechanic based advantage where you bring that weapon because there is a mechanic that weapon helps deal with a little bit better.
So what weapon do you think performs the best at just hitting Malkarian because it's floating? Not like it kills it the fastest, it does this, but like what is the
Guns.
best weapon?
Guns.
Chain blades and guns. Chain blades because chain blades has the safest and easiest boop to get off, and there
Right,
is a
and-
lot of boopable situations.
Exactly. And this is one thing that I'm going to say, like, this is what I would lean into Malkarian. And this is my big disposition with the fight. And it became so apparent to me once I started fighting Malkarian. I was like, this fight's too fucking easy. And you know what it is? Within 3 attacks, you can get 2 interruptible attack scenarios. How many behemoths, and this is my realization, how many behemoths start the fight with an interruptible attack? Riftstalker,
One.
Malkarian,
Skarn.
Yeah.
Skarn, Embermane. Like there's so many, like, and that's just like off the top, right? Pangar can. Like, dude, it bugged me. I was just like, oh my god, this game is so easy. Like, well, if you know how to interrupt, you win the game. And I just so every single behemoth doesn't need 2 interruptible attacks. It doesn't need all this, like, you know. I hate the hand holding, dude. I hate it so much.
I agree with you. There's they need to reevaluate interrupts and they need to reevaluate staggers. There should be a bigger emphasis on positioning and utilizing your combos and specials and mods and bringing, more than just a damage build. But if we turn back the time, Revy, and we go back to like alpha or early closed beta, where we didn't have that availability unless you use certain mods that were broken, 5 to 8 minute fights were considered fast. For an average player nowadays, that would probably be a 30-minute fight for them.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't think everything is like, just really quickly touching on alpha. Do I think Dauntless is in a better state than alpha was? Absolutely. But alpha isn't the golden days, right? Like chain blades could interrupt. Chain blades were freaking busted. Like the right click had no weighted strikes, right? Like it was very easy to do that kind of stuff. But we knew a lot less, and the damage was not there, right? Like we didn't have the cell system we currently have, so we could have been there, though. Is my point, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying it as the golden days. I'm just using it as a baseline for.
Yeah, that's what we know. Yeah, I totally understand.
You have the interrupts, you have the staggers, and then you have the power creep, and all 3 of those kind of affect the meta and how hard it is in the game. And right now, it's extremely hard because all 3 of those things are kind of running rampant.
Yeah, and I think they could really dial back. I think Syrah in this case would have that even more of a hard time if those interrupts windows, like people like Syrah, I should say, would have more of that. Like, man, I really want to play the strikers on Malk, but I don't get any interrupt windows now, right? But that just kind of goes to like you can always mount, right? If you're good at mounting, you could literally stay on mount forever if you have like Aether Strikers and the Skullforge. Like there are things that you can do to remedy that, but yeah, getting the wings and stuff becomes more of like I'm relying on my team, and that kind of sucks.
I think that would be, if anything, my core issue with Malk is that it has 2 phases to grinding it, which is the first one, I'm just trying to get all the pieces I need, which means wings, which means I can't really mount it because that I would kill him before I get the wings. And then it has a second phase where I don't care. I just need stupid Peerless Stormplate, which is literally Arcstone all over again. And all I care about is just killing him as soon as possible, which means I will be mounting him 100% of the time on his head and just slap him until it stops moving.
One thing, and this kind of just like rang a bell in my head, is one thing that we did is not on here is legendary weapons, and that kind of falls under escalation. I think that this kind of would be a good way to make like a really cool legendary weapon, right? Like there's like a really big disadvantage with the Aether Strikers on on Malk. And just to really touch on what you were saying is, I think that the Peerless Stormplate grind is there specifically to bonus roll like extra wings and make sure that you don't get the things like that. So the grind might be a little bit longer if you're not willing to switch weapons, but I think bonus rolling wings is still possible, right? Like,
Remind me again why Peerless Stormplates are rarer than the fucking epic drop.
yeah, I don't know.
Anybody?
Yeah, that is the choke point right now for my progression on the gear. is the
Why?
It's just kills, right? Like just farming kills.
Yeah, same.
I think that the plates, like if you're going for everything, I think you would be able to get all the wings no problem before you get all the plates. And that's
I'm
kind of
going
like
for everything. Yes, you will be running out of Peerless first. Nothing
Yeah.
else matters.
Yeah. So I mean, like in the short term, wings are like a really big hindrance. And so I like agree. I think that like you should be able to get them, but at the same time, I don't think that they're a massive issue. Like it's not like a
No,
because
if
you can get wings with Aether Strikers. It's just really
if you
difficult.
play well, you will get both wings and the head every fight consistently. So it is totally doable. It just means you're spending a lot more time running around waiting for him to stop doing whatever spinny move he's doing right now.
Correct.
But I would argue it's a choice, right? Like you said, it's definitely a choice. I could have picked up, I don't know, repeaters and just shot the wings off. The option was there. I didn't take it.
Yeah, I just don't. I want to see. I want people to like think about these things, right? Because it's important to know, like, okay, do we want the game to be like just full on soloable with every single weapon, and then but then those people turn around and complain about particular things that are like a clear intrusion of that philosophy. And I'm not saying that you're doing that, but I do think that a lot of people in the community do that.
Oh, I think I'm definitely
I-
part of this. Like, I definitely would argue I am one of the people who would sort of complain about one thing and then walk over to the opposite side and then complain about the thing I just complained about being changed, right? That's totally what I do.
Yeah, I think
but
the
at the
health
same
bar
time,
is like a prime example of that.
yeah, exactly. And I think to some extent, that's what we have developers for, is for looking at both sides and
Yeah.
concluding which one has the most benefits.
True. True.
But yeah,
Yeah, um, like as you said, right? The game is. It's just Malk has two interruptible like moves,
in the first
right?
3 moves.
Yeah.
It's dumb. Like okay, they should. Malk is supposed to be like the apex behemoth and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
And he's so he's not. He's easy. He's fucking like okay. It was hard like first couple times because we didn't know what he did, but then after we knew what he did, it's just just, oh every other behemoth, like, he doesn't feel like a challenge.
It feels like he only
that-
has like 6 moves. It's the weird part to
Okay.
me.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
when you were talking about like when you know how to interrupt, like you win the game, right?
Yeah.
Like, I would like to see them like flip that on its head. Like, oh,
Yeah.
you can interrupt a behemoth, but if you do, then it's going to get faster, or it's going to do more damage, or it's going to do X mechanic that's going to wipe the entire party in X amount of time, or something like that. Like
Yeah.
I would like
Yeah.
to see something like that.
Yep.
Something that disincentivizes. And this can also be attributed to like damage and stuff. Oh, if you damage this thing too fast, then you're going to like you're going to trigger X mechanic that'll blow up and wipe the entire party or something like that.
I mean, even just something where, okay, you booped him on that attack. Okay, he's not doing that attack anymore. That's your one shot you have. Like, that's it. You know what I mean? It's like, instead of him he got punished for doing an attack, but yet he keeps doing it over and over again. It's like, no, like, he got punished. Stop doing the attack.
I think it goes even further beyond that, where the interruptible attack, you want to get eaten, like you want to get hit. Like the first attack that Malk does, I think that's the worst design. Like that's the worst timeline. Hey, I want to get hit. That's like, yeah, that's like the incentivization of Iceborne, right? It's just like,
Yes.
all right, I'm gonna take this damage. Y'all just do your thing. I'm a chill in its mouth for a bit. All right, I'm gonna get hit by this. You know, I heavily dislike that. I think that's awful design in
Just
terms
to,
of like
just to touch
difficult
on
content.
just to touch on the fact that we talked about the interrupting. You should maybe the behemoth should change its behavior after you do it. Like there are so many things on different behemoths, like Skarn, where if you, for example, broke all of his rocks, he should do something else instead of just being without those rocks. Because there are so many like ideas and like things you could have done with most of the behemoth. Like Embermane, for example, like he has a lot of interrupts as well. Like he just continues those interrupts even though you just interrupt him.
It's like,
So-
yeah, I didn't work. I'm gonna do it again. It's
Yeah,
like,
like
That's something that you could implement on like, base Embermane does that, like the normal Embermane
Yeah.
does that, but Bloodfire definitely has a little bit more intelligence, right?
yeah. For
And I think
example,
that
you could have done something like, I'm sorry for cutting you off there, but
no, you're fine.
you like, for example, the Bloodfire, if it gets booped once, then next time it'll do the same attack, but at the end, instead of like being able to be booped, it'll do something else like spin around, or then something that would trick the Slayer into thinking like they're gonna do something, and then you just fuck with them.
Or
yeah, make it feel more cautious when it
Yeah.
gets
Yeah.
punished for its
I
behavior.
think that
like, okay,
yeah.
I gotta be careful.
Yeah, interruptible attack should definitely be the strongest attack that a behemoth has, and in Malk's case that's true, but
It's an insta.
but yeah.
I
Yeah,
think to
I
some
want-
extent I disagree with those arguments, especially with switching behaviors, because at that point I just have to wonder how much more development time that would be, right? Because it
Yeah.
needs
I mean,
animation,
Yeah.
it needs coding, and I just
Yep.
don't think it would be worth it. I prefer more
true.
behemoths over more complex behemoths.
Well, you do have a good point, but also I wouldn't. At this point, I don't really prefer new behemoths. But also, you're right that it is kind of too late. That we know them so well that even if they do change the behavior here and there, that it's not going to make that much of a difference. They're still going to get obliterated. So it's just.
yeah.
But that also runs
so-
into the issue of weapons being too strong. So if they were weaker, then it's like it's just that balancing act. So
I think that I don't like all like I have to exclude us from the equation, because what I really focus on when I'm thinking about behemoths is how does this feel to fight? Does it feel like I'm fighting a janky machine, or does it feel like I'm fighting an actual opponent that is a ferocious beast? Right? And that's what I am really looking for. I don't care, if they made these changes, I don't think it would make a big difference to us, but I think the first impression of how the game would be received from a player that's just getting into the game and like taking it very seriously, I think it would be more widely regarded that there's time and a lot of love that goes into the AI and all that stuff, because that's the big difference for me. Like if I can really just, I hate doing this, but like compare Monster Hunters monsters, they feel like animals. Like they feel like how they look. They have behaviors. They have personalities, and that's something that I feel like I'm fighting a machine in Dauntless. Right? It's just learning the machine. And
it would help us, if those.
I think that, so I have to disagree with Syrah and say that I do think that love and care, and while it's a lot of time, maybe not going back, but in the future, I would rather see behemoths have a specific personality and flair to them that makes it iconic, because that's how you get character. That's why people love Zinogre. That's why people love Nurgi. That's why people love Gormagala, because those flagship, there's a reason why they're flagship monsters. Dauntless doesn't really have a flagship, right? Like
I think you're right. Dauntless has more mechanical identities of behemoths. Like Boreas, it's an ice shield with monsters. Philomir, orbs everywhere, right? It's sort of the first thing you think of is the iconic move of the thing, not necessarily the beast itself, so to speak. So I think to some extent you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean we grind these behemoths day in and day out, so the fact that they are as simplistic as they are really gets boring way faster. If the fights were, each of them were like more spiced up, each time you fight them, it's they actually like adapt at least a little bit. I mean, I know that they said that they tried to do that with like Ristalker or something like that, but it's still just like, I don't know. It doesn't. You don't get that kind of feeling that much with it. But
It's still, well, here's the thing. If Riftstalker didn't have a move that like started with an interrupt attack, Riftstalker has enough moves that like he's still gonna clap your cheeks. Like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good you are. Like you might be tired that day. Like it can lose to Riftstalker. Like everybody in this channel can lose to Riftstalker.
Yeah.
Right. So no. Oh, okay.
I haven't lost to
I would
Riftstalker
Well, yeah.
like since he came out, and
Riftstalker, Valamir, and Hellion, I think, are
oh fuck.
the most challenging behemoths where you can still do everything right, but you slip up and you could die no matter how veteran.
Yeah, there's
exactly.
that danger, like that looming threat, right? There's a looming threat on all those behemoths, and I
especially
think
Gnasher.
Jeez.
I think
I would
that there.
prefer. Oh yeah, sorry.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I would prefer. I would prefer to have fewer, more rich and complex experiences than many shallow and boring experiences. Is what it boils down to, pretty
And
much.
I think everybody that has been playing a Dauntless for a long time feels the exact same way. I would much rather have meaningful content that is long term, and whether it's for me or for the player base, over a large volume of shallower experiences. I think that's the best way to describe it.
Definitely, yeah. And I would, to sort of come back to the whole behemoth section there, I think one of the arguments I would support is saying that maybe behemoths aren't the best way to make new content for Dauntless.
Yeah, 100%.
Right.
That's something that's not even on here. I mean, this podcast could go for eons, but
Yeah, we're
like thinking of like new ways to be interactive. But yeah, I'm all for fishing. I'm all for trade
yes,
skills.
sky fishing one day.
Please.
Well, we can discuss that in another podcast.
Let
I mean, we
us-
should do these more
I-
often.
We should.
To be honest,
It's just so hard to get everyone together,
Right.
All right.
Alright.
and for
Let's
my
move
brain
on
not
to
to
the next
die every time
Oh.
we need to do this.
Oh. Before
wanna
we
do,
move on,
Okay, can I go real quick? Is
Yeah.
because I've been thinking about this. Basically, I want to bring up mounting before we get off of that topic, which is two things. Which is one, if you want to clear the behemoth faster, you're encouraged to not mount the behemoth because that means you can't boop him, which is really kind of annoying. But the second part of that is I was really disappointed with how the mounting system worked in the first place. My first experience with trying to mount Malkarion was I had a level 3 mantra or whatever it's called, jumped on his back, and I tried to use the clap and realized, oh crap,
no.
all I can do is spam left click on his back. This is just like, it's just a button masher when you're on his back with occasional jumping off a spacebar. It felt very like very generic and not like very interactive.
Yeah, repeater users can use or right click on the Malkarim and mounting him.
Favoritism.
It's just as like the bells.
Yeah, like it's just disappointing, like how they design their behemoths in their fights right now. If this is their apex behemoth, like I do not, I do not have any hope for any good or meaningful design in the future
But
for
I don't
any of the
think
new
he's meant
behemoths.
to be
So.
the apex of behemoths. He doesn't feel that way. He's
He
just the
has
end of
his
the game mode.
he's like he has his own goddamn throne, and you have to fight several behemoths before him to fight him. And if you don't reach a certain threshold, you don't even get to fight him. So
And it gives you
is that not
legendary
supposed
gear.
Yeah, and it gives you legendary gear. And can we talk about that? How ass the legendary ability is? Like, what the fuck is that shit?
Well, I feel like
sure.
I feel like the prismatic slots were a great idea. The execution of them to put on a weapon which has a unique ability that's just teleport that can be used once. It wasn't executed perfectly.
Yeah. I mean, as far as legendary weapons go, I mean, yes, like the flexibility and the fact that you can bond all the weapons of that elemental type to that particular weapon, make it, turn it into that weapon, but with prismatic cell slots, it's cool. But well, the quote unquote legendary ability, which is the thing that makes it different from everything else, excluding the prismatic slots and shit, it was fucking underwhelming. It's so bad.
I think it's bad. Like like on paper, it looks awful, but I've done some cool stuff with it. Like I think it's like it falls under that exotic sort of thing. And I mean, like exotics are another topic, but the fact that it's 0 stamina to pretty much cross the map if you wanted to, in like a dual behemoth hunt in Escalation, like it has a niche, and it's not like utterly useless. It is bad, but it's not utterly useless. And I don't think it gets enough credit for what it is, but because it is like I've used it to get over to, a friend. If I'm playing Warpike, like a behemoth dies on one side of the map, I just hit one button and then I pop Wellspring, and you could, it's just that instant sort of, I'm mindful, and it's another button to press too. That's I love movement in this game. Like I absolutely.
Okay,
I still think the damage is way underwhelming for the grind, for everything that you do to get that weapon. I mean, they could at least make it like, even if they just made it part damage, make it like a
Really?
2K, 3K part damage attack.
For me, prismatic cell slots are more than enough for a reason to grind that. I think that's like a cherry on top.
Here's my argument with that.
Okay.
The only thing that you get with Malk is you're not forced into a defensive slot that you would have with Drask Hammer. And when the Fire Behemoth comes out, you don't even need the prismatic slots really, because you're likely going to slot double power in there anyways. And again, that goes back again to an issue with meta. But the thing with fire is, the fire legendary is going to open up maybe a few more deviations from the meta build, but it's nothing significant. And the same thing with the Malk. Like, you just don't have to invest in what is it called, the one that keeps you from getting knocked down, because that's basically the only reason I use a defensive slot.
For a sword user, I bond Stormclaw because
sword's the only exception.
Well, I mean, like there's the Warpike too, right? Like it has a technique and strength. Like there are a couple with technique and strength, and it's just like it allows it for a little bit more of a free form thing. And I mean, I don't think that legendary weapons, they're slightly better. They're always going to be better because you just bond with another thing, and you get prismatic cell slots. I don't think that like it needs much more than that. It's like, because you're an advocate for power creep, right? Like I just don't really think that it needs to be insane. I think it needs to be fun, and I think it is fun. I do think it is fun. The animation's very flashy. It looks good on stream. Like there's a lot of like I'm like, you laugh, but I'm being serious. Like I do think that flair and style and personality are ways that don't add to power but make the game so much more like verified. Like it's so and I think it's important.
I'll agree with that. And I forgot that it does interrupt. So
I mean, okay, hold on. But the problem is that you can only use it once.
But that I have a lot to say about things that you can only use once, because in video games you gotta have things that you don't have an abundance of. What do we have abundance of? We have an abundance of power, and how you use that thing, that one thing, is way more. Like, look at our consumables. We chug those consumables on cooldown. But if we only had one like really big Super Saiyan tonic, when you use that and how you use it is way more of like it. People realize that. Yeah, it's impactful, and when people, it's going to make a difference to whether or not the skillful players, when they use that versus the guy that just uses it. And when everything's in abundance, I hate that. And the legendary key is like a brand new button for us to press when we use it On stream, in trials, it's meaningful to other people. It's like, oh, that's when I pop that
mean,
button.
I agree with
Yeah.
you there, but I think there's one problem there that I do think exists, which has been sort of on the back of my mind, and that's the fact that this does not feel like a button you're supposed to press in specific scenarios due to the long wind up and really just the effect of it itself. I think it is super flashy. I think it is super cool, and I'm happy that we have it.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
think, like, it's not like a sword parry. If I only
Yeah.
had one sword parry the entire game, that moment of parrying a behemoth would be sort of more important, right?
Yep.
But I don't. But it's not a sword parry. It's like sort of running towards the behemoth with less running.
Okay. To
And no stamina cost. So
Yeah,
to
no, it's
elaborate
not
on
a bad
my
ability. It's just not good for sort of reactionary gameplay. That's what I'm saying.
yeah,
to elaborate on that, my issue with it is it looks flashy, it's cool, but for a one-time usability, it sure as hell doesn't do what it should do, which is like, if it's one-time use and it looks so cool, it should do something, like it should have a really like powerful effect. But since it's so fucking underwhelming, it's like in proportion to power, the power of the ability, I feel like okay, since it's such an underwhelming ability, why don't you allow us to use it a little bit more often? Like, it doesn't have to be like, oh, you can use it every other time. It can be like every 20, like 10, 20 seconds. So like that's the disparity, that
I
and
feel
the
like if
issue
you
that
can
I'm
use it
having
every
with that
10
ability.
seconds, you just have an interrupt at will.
I
Like,
mean, every 20 seconds or
Yeah,
whatever.
but like I would
Basically.
argue it doesn't even feel that way. It feels like a special move that I can only use once. So if I could use it
Yeah.
multiple times, it would just feel weird.
and in
Right,
escalation,
yeah.
you can use it multiple times, and that's where you achieve the weapons. Like, I don't really agree with like being able to use it more than once, because and it's just like, I think it's about thinking a little bit more like what it means to have a legendary weapon, right? Like, if you achieve something in escalation, it makes sense that it pops off in escalation and you can use it more. But in the base game, it's like, I think that helps keep things in check as well. Like, if you could spam a legendary ability that dealt 2,000 damage every 20 seconds or whatever,
No,
like, and interrupt with it, that hinders, like, if I'm doing like a frost patrol with a bunch of random people, it's like, or a terra patrol, it's like, I don't know, I don't know.
I don't know. I agree.
yeah,
I agree. I think having it only usable once is a good thing. I would just argue that it's just gonna depend so much on what the next one's gonna be and whether or not it's gonna be different.
Yeah,
Because at
I
this
have a
point,
big
I just
concern.
don't really know what the developers want it to be, compared to what we think it should be, right?
Yeah, true.
no. I think you're misunderstanding me. I don't want it to be an ability where you can use it every 20 seconds and then
I'm
you
just
get
saying, like,
fucking
all I really
2,000
wanted to say
damage.
was you can use it more than once. So you can use it
Yeah,
more
I
than once
mean,
in certain
yes, in
situations,
escalation, yes. But
and
what
that's
I
like the
was
main
saying,
form of content for us, right? Like,
I mean, in
yeah,
trials, you
but
can't even use it once if you're lucky.
I mean, I'm done with
wh-
escalation until next one.
what
So.
I'm trying to say is, in proportion to how it is right now in terms of power, since it doesn't do a lot of damage and it's kind of, a one-off whatever thing, I I was thinking, like, since it has a long wind up, it doesn't do a lot of damage, maybe just allow us to use it a little, like, more than once, because I mean,
I would rather just
like,
have the channel be shorter. Like, I think having a shorter channel would make it more
Yeah.
Yeah.
like when. Then I think that I think we'll just have to agree to disagree. Like, I really think having one-off things is really like cool,
I mean,
because
yeah, but if it's going to be one off, it should, be something that has a high impact,
Yeah, I think we're on the same
which
I
page.
think an
is,
interrupt is high impact. Like, if you're across the map and you're not able to get an interrupt, like, no way, no. Scrave is like across the map up in the air, and then you time it and you get it. Like, I think that's sick. Like, I think it's just a matter of actually getting those moments.
Hmm.
But
Well,
I mean, it's like like I said, I think we just gotta agree to disagree. But
Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
I think that's the thing that I guess gives me the most frustration about the game right now is the devs are not communicating with us to direct conversations and discussions so that we can really, you know, have those meaningful back and forth, but have a guideline to it. Right now, we're just all throwing our own thoughts and evaluations of things, and we agree on things, we disagree on things, but the things we disagree on is because we have wildly differing ideas on how something should be, gone after, but we have nothing by the devs that kind of give us that baseline.
Yeah, we don't
well,
have a direction.
and I think a lot of that stems from the fact that a lot of these things are brand new. Like it's their first time implementing things, right? Mounting, and the legendary abilities, like something that just is literally a cross map dash, right?
And this is the
Like,
first grapple attack too, right? I don't think any other have a grapple.
yeah, like a grapple. And I think Lucian brought up a really good point. Is I would love to see behemoths that like last Frostfall, I had an idea that was just like, I want to see a Yeti that when you KO it, it just shakes it off and goes enraged. Like, oh, you want to KO me? Like, oh, word? Like, and then it's like Raging status, where it's just like, it gets KO'd, it just like it like maybe takes a couple steps back, shakes its head, and then goes in rage. And then it's just like, and then it's like a whole new, have fun dealing with that. I think that KOing and stuff like that, it would be interesting. Like getting interrupts be a bad thing. That would be a personality thing. And I think
that's about challenging the norm, challenging what players think is normal, and then flipping it on its head. That's what they should be doing, exploring new frontiers and doing that stuff.
Yeah, totally agree. Shall we get
Move on.
Aodin's input on UI changes? Because it's been like
I think
I'll keep it brief.
Mm.
For those of you that don't know, everybody in here knows, but for chat and everybody, I've done competitive testing for a wide variety of games and a wide variety of genres, and the mobile gaming scene is definitely picking up. It's becoming huge. It is definitely something a lot of money is being invested into. The problem is whenever you do a cross-platform game, and you can see this with Fortnite, you can see this with any other games, when you go to mobile, you have to make a different UI completely for mobile. And I think the current new UI changes are majority done to fit a mobile scheme, which in turn ruins the UI experience for PC and console players.
Yeah.
I think it's way too big. I play 1440p. I could not imagine having to deal with that UI at 1080p or even lower. And I mean, in my opinion, it's a little unacceptable to make that change in UI without putting in tools to either scale it back or move it. And as a hammer main, it's even more frustrating to have majority of the data that you're supposed to be processing for yourself or your team in the upper left part of the screen. Meanwhile, your reload for your hammer is now in the bottom middle of the screen. And then even that has its own issues.
Yeah, there's no one size fits all for console, PC, mobile. They have to be separate in order to actually please
either separate or provide the tools to console and PC to scale back and change.
Yeah, I think League of Legends is doing it correctly. Like the mobile release and console release came so much later, and it's like called something entirely different. Yeah, I agree. I think it's not so cut and dry as like, hey, we made this PC game, let's release it on console, let's release it on. But I mean, to be fair, cross play and cross platform is relatively new. Like Dauntless is one of the first, right? Like it's still it's being developed, right?
Yes, and I agree, but the UI changes are something that's constantly decided,
Right.
and
But it's also
Ye-
something. I mean, it changes though as well. Like, I mean, the iterations of the UI have gone in the past year, right? And
of course,
I don't think it's like locked in. Do I think it's not very good for some of the weapons? Absolutely. But I don't think it's like 100% locked in place, and that's what they're going to be going with for future releases of the game.
and that's the thing is like, I hate to say it, but the game is now quote unquote fully released. And when they make significant UI changes like that, it needs to be documented and there needs to be discussion beforehand. Yes, they should make the best decision based on what their stockholders have, what their CEO says, what people invested in their game have given feedback in. But I feel that the community as a whole is getting cut out more and more out of the discussions of how the game is changing instead of being roped into it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd
And
agree,
I think
even as
I
a
think the
partner.
UI, yeah, I think the UI demonstrates that very perfectly.
Reddit as a feedback forum, Kappa?
No.
Well, we'll save that for free talk.
He has a lot of opinions about that specific topic.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, so trials.
Oh.
Still trash.
Yep.
Okay, next one.
All right.
I think there's been a lot of feedback. I know I've personally given a ton of feedback on it. I'm sure there's feedback in other channels in other ways that we are not privy to. I'm sure Revi has given tons of feedback in the partner Discord and other partners have. And, you know, I see comments here made in there by other trials competitors, people who, I'm not talking about people who just go on there and do sub 3 carries. I'm talking about the people that actually grind for top 5, who did it multiple times, who wanted the most out of trials possible. I think the issue was, one, we had a recycle of content with not even the modifiers really being changed up, and the feedback from that first cycle not even being implemented, also, as well as bugs and issues still being present even to today. We'll probably even see them if a cycle 3 happens. The rewards are not adequate for the grind for top 5 at all. And on top of that, I mean, yeah, now we're finally getting Rams to purchase pots, which are chugged like nobody's business for trials if you're actually competing in it. But when you don't maintain balance and maintain a more fluid meta, it makes it really hard to take a competitive version of the game or a competitive mode seriously when, for example, all you see is strikers. And my issue, to really quickly cap that, is you have strikers, which, yes, is a new weapon. Yes, they were implemented and probably overtuned to make them more popular. That's fine, but start scaling them back. So far, the scale backs have been very minute. And even with the AS nerf to everything overall in the game, that actually only made strikers a harder meta. And that is because strikers have a lot of mobility. Just because people can't use their Q dodge correctly, it has a lot of mobility, and it's a lot faster and it's a lot more effective than the hammer. And you're starting to see the same thing with chain blades. I know Lion's
Built-in
going to hate
attack
me for
speed
saying this.
steroid.
Yeah. I know Lion's going to hate me for saying this, but chain blades is right behind strikers right now. They got a damage boost that they really didn't need. And now with the current features and current UEs and stuff in the game and the power creep where it is right now, chain blades, you know, are hot second behind strikers right now. And as soon as strikers are nerfed, chain blades are going to be the meta.
So if Hellion chain blades didn't exist, let's say Hellion weapons in general don't exist, like where is chain blades?
Hot second or third.
Yeah.
They still have a significant amount of damage with serrated blade mod and 360 light. And not to mention they have the safest boop in the game.
Yeah,
They
I
have
think
a free
that's
dodge
like
on Q.
I think that's the biggest chain blades, like very apparent. Like the chain blades fills the role that in my opinion, the sword should be. It doesn't really like the sword doesn't like pop off in the damage department, but I mean, recently it has actually kind of been because Avenging Overdrive is pretty sick, but I think that it's like well balanced, right? But I feel like the chain blades does interrupts way safer. It's like it doesn't really have a bad matchup. It dodges consistently. Having a dodge as a special is like insane. And I feel like the chain blades and the sword, like chain blades is just a better sword. That's how I feel about it.
And to me, if something is going to have the evasion and mobility that is greatly superior to other weapons, I kind of use sword as the baseline of balance. Sword doesn't excel at anything, but can do everything. And you have chain blades, which has the most evasion in the game and the most mobility. There's no reason that should have more or the same top end DPS as sword. Same thing with strikers. You have a very fast weapon with a built-in attack speed modifier with stagger damage and still has great amount of mobility. It should not be doing more damage than sword. I think Warpike and sword should be on the same level, given that wound doesn't get remade into something superly overpowered. But the reason why axe and hammer were the top for the longest time is because they required positioning. And until Aether Slam was implemented, both axe and hammer, you had to really optimize those combos in your windows to get that top end DPS.
Can I ask a question to everybody here? Would you care about the weapon balance as much if you had your own specific like weapon leaderboard?
Yes, I
I would still care about it for group trials, because that would still have a hard
for sure. Yeah, I agree.
Like, even if like there was like individual boards for different like all the different weapons, weapon balance over for the overall game, still I would care about it definitely, because I mean
I would say care about it, but like I would say like, would you? Here's the thing, when you play a rogue in an MMO and the warrior does 1% more damage, there's always going to be the outcry of people that are like, oh man, rogue sucks. Like, you're either the best or you're not the best. And I think there needs to be an understanding of like how much that balance really matters.
So
Like Aether Strikers, definitely out of tune, like definitely overtuned. And I think a lot of the weapons are, and Dibs has told me this personally, is that when the new mods came out and the new specials came out and trials came out, like one of the first thing I was just like, man, some of these things are pretty crazy. Dibs says, yeah, the next 6 months are gonna be hell. So like I, from my perspective, like we're still in that 6 months period where the balance is still like out of whack.
And I agree with that. And whenever you implement something new, and obviously Phoenix Labs has progressed a lot with the combat of Dauntless, adding unique effects, adding different mods that do different things, and they really, are escalating, no pun intended, the combat system as a whole. And whenever you do that, you're going to create some kind of power creep in the favor of one weapon or the other. The issue is right now, it feels like weapons do not have a baseline. And it's really hard to talk about how should cells be balanced? How should certain combat aspects be balanced when there is no exact baseline for the weapons? So let's say baseline right here. Chainblade strikers and repeaters are tier 3. Sword and warpike are tier 2, and then axe and hammer are tier 1. Let's bear with me.
Yeah.
What is the baseline difference in top end DPS given you're playing the weapon absolutely optimally? What should be the deficit between each of those tiers? They don't have that established. So it's really hard to say, okay, well, overpower is too strong on hammer, but it's not that strong on sword and below. So let's just nerf overpower on hammer a little bit, so that the difference between, let's say, a tier 3 and a tier 1 weapon is only 10 to 15% top end DPS difference. That means if you
Mhm.
go into trials, that's going to be a 15 to 20-second difference. That's still going to be a lot for top 5, given this won't affect individual solo boards. The
Mhm.
individual solo boards legitimize the competition for that weapon in that leaderboard.
Mhm.
However, for group, that's still going to make a difference, but I think what they need to focus on balancing that for group trials is the mechanics present in the fight, like you
Mhm.
said, that make you want to diversify your weapon set and not bring 4 hammers and not bring 4 strikers. That's where I
Absolutely.
think they should combat that deficit between the tier damage of weapons. But until
Mhm.
they establish that baseline, it's really mute and point at this time to really discuss how weapons should even be balanced, because we don't have a baseline. We don't
Well,
know
let me ask
where they
you
want to
something.
take it.
Let me ask you, do you think it's the right time to establish that right now with so many experimental like things on the table?
I think it's better sooner than later, and then readjust as things go on. I think right now, I quite honestly, I think hits client side hit detection is the number one priority, and then weapon balance after that, because as much as people want to say, well, you can play whatever weapon you enjoy and stuff like that, but it impacts players. It impacts new players, and impacts current players, and impacts veteran players when weapon balance is so out of whack that, like axe players. Think about how axe players have felt for the last year.
Yeah.
Escalation finally made them relevant. Like, as a dedicated axe player, which Predheld is, like, that's a shitty feeling to play a game that you've invested the last 2 years into, and then for almost a year, the main weapon you enjoy that you love is just not even relevant in any mode to be said.
Mm.
And
Yeah, I can.
not to mention Axe's like the stuff Axe got from the trials shop is
So bland.
Again,
I can't even say that I like X anymore.
like how can we talk about balancing mods, balancing specials, giving them the uniqueness and aspects that make them more than just a DPS calculation without establishing a baseline? And I think if they establish a baseline sooner than later, it will make balancing things and dealing with overtuning or undertuning a little bit better than what it is right now. Because
I'd
right now
agree.
they're just piling on the power creep, piling on mechanics in the game, and it's just making it worse and worse and worse.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
separating the
think a little
difference
bit
even.
more focus. Yeah, I think the focus is definitely not there. Like the concern is to get like more things into the game and see how they are reacted to, not about like maintaining balance for sure. I think that's 100% accurate. As far as the axe goes, I think it's definitely gotten the short end of the stick for the longest amount of time, next to the war pike, and I would love to see and that's a byproduct of um it's not just weapons though, like it's definitely everything. It's the state of the game where ramping just isn't viable, and those are the two ramping weapons, right?
Yep.
So yeah, viable at a high end, obviously, but I mean escalation goes for a long time, so now they're good, and they brought them out, and they stand out. Like they're the like I feel like the axe is the rock star of escalation.
I have issues with X, but that's a different topic.
Yeah.
So yeah. As far as trials go, I would like to see more of an emphasis on rewarding people for completing like something extremely difficult rather than having a big focus on um
Sub three
shorter hunt
time
like
attack.
sub 3 times.
Yeah.
um yeah, so what I would like to see is instead of focusing on sub 3s and shit, um you would be rewarded the same amount of marks you get for getting a sub 3, but for killing the behemoth, but you make it super fucking difficult to even clear. That's what
Yep.
I would like to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was
Like-
testing trials, my first thing that I suggested, and I did like one trial run, and I was just like, all right, leaderboards are scuffed, like they're already so bad. That was the first thing I suggested. We need individual leaderboards. The second thing was literally what you just said. There's an emphasis on time attack when the game doesn't prepare you for that, right? Like it's more about the kill. And I think that you create this like competition between like an unnecessary competition by having I need to get sub 3. Like just add the timer and have your time posted on the leaderboard, but to get rewarded, you're gating people and it's discouraging. Like I bet everybody here has gotten like at some point like lost by a second or like landed on 3 minutes and didn't get it or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, and that feels like shit. And I think a good way to encourage and bring out other play styles is just being able to complete something. And it brings the community together as opposed to like, oh, you're not good enough for sub 3. Peace. Right.
And
Yeah,
that's what you see with escalation. But
Yep.
here's my thing with trials, and I mean, Revi, you've been there day one with me on this. Is there's a speedrun community within Dauntless, and it's a healthy community for the game. It's a healthy community for lots of different aspects. And obviously, trials was them finally giving us like an actual acknowledged mode for doing that.
Yep.
I think I agree with completion should be the goal for majority of players, but I do believe, at least on the cosmetic level,
Yep.
that
Yeah,
there should be
you
more
can be
rewards.
rewarded.
Yeah, there should
Yeah.
be more rewards
100%.
gated behind top 5 and top 100 that really show, like, if I'm walking around, like right now, if I walk around with a gold crown, it means nothing.
Nothing.
To
Yeah.
newer players, to intermediate players, yeah, that looks cool. Oh, hey, how did you get that crown? But for anybody that's invested in the game, it's like, oh, hey, you got top 100. Good for
Oh,
you.
actually,
Did you
the
do it during a
crown-
tragic? Did you do it during a tragic echo week? Oh yeah, okay.
The crown just makes you a target for people wanting carries. From my
Oh yeah, that
experience.
too. And
Mhm.
the thing is, like, the one thing that differentiates you as a top 5 player is the Dauntless title, which is only seen in less than 10% of the game.
And it's ongoing.
The crown, the golden crown, should have been locked behind top 5. Certain weapon skins should have been locked behind top 5, and then you have the armor locked in the staff, the flag staff locked behind, top 100. There needs to be a clear difference for people who invest, because anybody who's placed top 5, even on easier weeks or tragic echo weeks, it's still a grind. You're still competing against a lot of people. And right now, a lot of the people completing in the group trial boards aren't even competing against the best players. Most of us have stopped playing group trials and trying to get top 5. You don't see Banana's group up there. You don't see my group up there. You don't see any other try hard groups up there. It's mainly people doing sub 3s, and then some people figuring out some of the meta that has already been in existence just with strikers, getting top 5. And to me, it removes all the value and effort I would put in to get top 5, even for the recognition of being on the leaderboard.
Yeah. I think that my big silver lining for all this, because my perspective, I've bowed out of trials. Like I run casually and I play casually as content for my stream, and that's it. I don't really it's all content. It's not about me being, number one. It's not about the competition. I love the community aspect. I love that the speedrun community has maintained itself and some of its members for so long, because that's a feat that's very, very hard to do, especially in an age where games are just a dime a dozen. As far as trials go, I don't think it's too late, and that's what kind of keeps me hopeful. I think that Trials can definitely go in the direction that it needs to go to add those tiers of rewards, you know, and to do all that. Is Trials hitting the mark? No, I think it's trashed right now. I think it was launched in the worst possible state it could have launched in, and but I don't think it's too late. And so I hope that Phoenix Labs actually listens to our feedback this time around, because it looks like they're truly trying to fix it, or to put more effort into it.
Yeah.
And we can hope for that. And I mean, I'm very glad that Creature took my feedback on using Google Forums for feedback, because again, we'll get to it in free talk. Reddit is not a good platform for meaningful feedback. But
Neither are
I think,
forums, though.
yeah, I think the feedback is there. I think they have the information they need. It's just now we're waiting on them to act on it, or to have the discussions with us on how to proceed with it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I would definitely like to see. Actually, you know, I would like to see Trials be the mode that where they add that mechanical complexity and meaning to set mechanics that I was talking about earlier, and you know, just make I would like to see them turn those, like, our everyday cream of the, like, uh garden variety behemoth into like those raid bosses you see in other MMOs. Like in I like to reference I don't know if you guys have seen or know of Final Fantasy 14 bosses, but that game, like when they do their bosses, they do their bosses fucking well. And I would like to see Trials be that mode for Dauntless.
I would like them to do the same vein as Behemoth and Extremeth in Monster Hunter World. Like, if they could pull off anything close to that, I think that would be great. As far as it being individual weekly I don't think Trials is going to be that mode, just because the amount of expense and the amount of time to develop something that's only, you know, however many percentage of the player base is going to experience, it probably isn't worth their time or their money. And so I think that adding a like a limited time fight similar to how they did Extremeth and Behemoth would be more feasible.
Yeah, well, whatever they do, I just hope they add a mode like that.
For sure. Yeah, I think I think more difficult content is needed.
Okay. Are we done talking about Trials? Because now I want to segment to something that's actually later on the schedule, but I feel like it's a good thing to bring it up now that someone mentioned something.
I just want to bring up that since this is new, I mean, a lot of the stuff we've been talking about has existed since Trials has been a thing. We all basically agreed on this from the start, that Trials is kind of, you know, little leaderboards are messed up, this and that and the other thing. But something that's new for me personally is that I have no need for it anymore. I literally have all of the gilded marks I had wanted since I started. It used to be that we needed to at least do Trials to get to the gilded marks because we wanted to get the cosmetics. But we now, if we've been keeping up every week, have the full armor set, crown, banner, and weapon. There's nothing else.
I'm aiming to get every single gold weapon and thing in the store, so I don't know what you're talking about.
But that's just more for like collection. Like, that's just more for being a collector. But I just mean, like, you have right now a full set. You can stop in your. That's it. That's all of the recognition that anyone ever really will see from you, because that's the extent of it. So really, the biggest issue that I've been having is that I would complain about all these other things with Trials a lot more, but I don't need it anymore. So
I think that has to do with like a revamp, though. Like, I think that it's just the way that, like, the system is flawed in that way, and you can't, like, without fixing it. Yeah, you're like, for people like you, Predel, like, yeah, you're done, right? Like, I don't think you can really, with the current system, I don't think you can fix that without just being like, okay, we added more cosmetics, I guess, but no one's playing
Right.
trials, right? Like,
Yeah,
that's the
done with
issue, is no one's
trials.
playing trials. Why would they invest time into it?
Done with escalation, done with trials. It's like, okay, what else do we have? I don't know. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot the base game.
Well, okay.
Mastery is pretty much all that's left for us.
Pretty much, yeah.
Right.
And then there's some of us that has wasted too much time on the Wikipedia and are far behind.
Yeah. And I mean, I'd care more about the trials leaderboards, but right now, is it like I care about group trials is my main thing, and I don't want to use strikers, so I don't care.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Totally.
And
Oh yeah,
it's more. Oh,
you go.
I feel like it's more farming for the perfect RNG than it is actually expressing your skill, in my opinion.
Also a good
Yep.
also a good segue.
So yeah.
Anyone have
I'm
any?
gonna move.
Well, yeah, we can move on. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay, so I want to go to the project reveal because.
No guild features of
Oh no, we're gonna go back to that because we had there was some word that came up that I really wanted to segue to this one instead.
Yeah,
So it's a project I have been working on for some time. I actually dropped it. I think Sarah might know what it is because I told him not long ago. Because Aiden, you're probably gonna like this one. Since the reason why the speedrun community actually died mostly was because we couldn't get consistent timings on behemoths, because we always had to go by the in-game timer and they would always just like spawn different places.
RNG.
Yeah. If you look on stream, this is a project I finished with the speedrun community. If I can get it up, actually. We have perfected a auto starter and an auto splitter for Dauntless. If it shows up, which it doesn't right now, this is fun. It just worked a second ago. A lot of issues right now. Fuck it. Oh.
I mean, part of the reason too. I mean, yeah, timer.
Let's just pull it up over here. Yeah. But the timer essentially, because we started talking about the hard, right? The thing is, the only reason why this auto splitter works is because it checks the screen. If you look here, it checks the screen whenever the hard pops up. So whenever you enter into an area with a behemoth, the hard will show up, and then it will start the timer, and it will split as soon as it says the behemoth has been slain.
Nice.
Oh, so it checks for the heart. Okay.
Yeah, because this is a video auto splitter. I'm currently working on getting a in-game auto splitter. The reason why that doesn't work perfectly is the fact that the in-game auto splitter I would have to open Cheat Engine, and I do not risk getting banned over that.
That's great though. Like, I think that's phenomenal. I think that's really good for the speedrunning community, and it also encourages that to be like a baseline addition.
I like it. None of you comment on me
Definitely
taking
easier,
50
definitely
minutes
does
to
help.
kill a rogue Nasher. Thank you for that.
I'm just
Good
gonna-
job.
It took me way too long.
This is basically why we needed the hearts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
basically,
guess-
thank you, hearts. I am now converted.
Good job, Blocks.
And mostly the thanks go to the speedrun tool development community, which helped me set it up, but I provided the data, so.
Nice.
Well, we can go back to guild
Alright.
features if that was just
So,
it.
where to begin? Guilds are still useless. So
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty brief topic.
It is. It was because we,
Yeah.
I think it was, who was it? So a dev said something about they're working on guild features. So,
Yeah, so from what I
really?
remember, on the Reddit, they mentioned that they are planning features for this year.
Oh wow.
I think they've been planning features for a long time, and then like I want to get excited, but I'll be excited when they bring them into the game. Like,
Yeah, I'm more
Oh,
interested to
yes.
see what it is than the fact that they're doing something.
yeah, as far as like guild features go, I would like just better social features in general. My biggest social feature gripe is 100% the friends list is trash. Inviting
Yes.
people is a
Yeah.
nightmare,
Oh my
and
god, yes.
maintain like even if I did have features and they were the best guild features in the world, I wouldn't be able to maintain my guild as a guild leader. And
It's
I think that
impossible.
yeah, I think especially without any and this is kind of like, you know, limitations. Like we need to, how many people can we have in a guild? How are supposed to be? What's the benefit of having like a smaller guild versus a bigger guild? Like there's so many dynamics that just are so up in the air and we don't know anything about. I feel like guild features are, we could talk forever on them and it just doesn't matter, right? Like
But we can more talk about the like what do we want to see.
I think management features like friends list and guild list management features and a structure that actually makes sense is my number one.
Mhm.
Some kind of general meeting area for your guild that would, we currently don't have it. Anything.
Yeah,
Oh,
that would
We don't have
definitely
the space.
guild airship. When?
Airship, meeting hall, something. There is a literal building that's like a guild hall. I think it's like labeled
No,
as such,
like
but it's just not used.
literally a custom guild airship where you can like customize it and like everybody can like design their own rooms and shit.
Oh yeah, see, this brings back to the topic. Like, I've been saying, like, I think every podcast, give me like trophies and open world so I can hunt and get like trophies I can hang on the wall.
Man.
And that sounds like so far from what we currently have, though.
I don't
I don't
care.
think.
We can dream. We can dream.
We can dream. Why do you have to be a dream killer?
I'm
Does
sorry.
that make this a Dreamcast?
No, no, it does not. No.
Very, very funny.
Okay, so if that was it,
Let's
like
move on. I
guild
guess.
features, now people can
Well, I
start
looked at
whining on monetization.
Well, since we talked, just real quickly, since we talked about, I mentioned something in Ramsgate. Anyone know what the heck happened to Gaius Copper Whale? He's just doesn't exist.
What do you mean? Isn't he up? Isn't he up at the?
No, he's not.
No,
He's gone.
He's gone.
Yeah.
Copperfield.
Yeah. We currently don't have a cartographer.
How are we
For a while.
He's gone.
I gotta remove him from the Gamepedia then.
I don't know.
He has
they just
no
moved
existence.
him. I can't find him. He's just gone. He
Yeah.
must have made his apple tea or whatever, and he's just chilling in his house from now on.
Maybe he's out on an expedition.
Hashtag bring Gaius back.
Maybe when
Yeah,
he
I'm
comes
sure.
back, he'll
He was
have
literally
a
the most
complete-
generic NPC in existence, so I
Yeah.
kind of am sad.
If you've seen the art from like the limited edition book, like that's so much better than what it looks in game.
Yeah, I completely agree.
wish
They
he got
literally
a
just
different-
took default model and
Yeah.
put Gaius there.
Like, come on, like the design he have in there, he has like a coat on and like a lab coat and shit. Like, come on, like use that instead.
Okay, yeah, alright, that was my tangent.
Monetization, Lucian.
Twin Sons in the store, peeps. Let's talk about it. Let's
Oh,
talk
yeah.
about that. Yes.
Nice.
So, biggest fucking gripe. This is setting a fucking terrible precedence for the game, my dudes. I do not condone the selling of actual physical, well, not physical, but actual weapons that you can use in the store, especially when they're exotics. Granted that they are, in fact, worse than normal guns, but still, it's like you're selling a weapon that you can actually use in the game and that has an effect on the game, a high effect to that extent. And yeah, that I feel like that constitutes as a very poorly made monetization decision, and I hope that they take it out and reverse their stance on it. And
Well, I doubt they'll reverse it, but I hope moving forward they don't ever do it again, because not only like isn't it exotic, all the other exotics you have to grind for. although the grind is not nearly as bad as it was before, you still have to grind for it. You have to craft it. You have to, do all that stuff. And although the Twin Suns is just purchasable through trials, it's through trials, the mode that you're supposed to have completed the entire game in order to unlock.
Yeah,
And you're
it's what,
buying
3 to
that,
4 weeks of trials or something?
yeah,
Yeah.
3 to 4 weeks worth of trials. So, I mean, like I said earlier on in the podcast, when it's that big of a difference in the amount of time invested versus just buying it outright, it's not okay.
Like when somebody asks me the question, "Oh, is this game pay to win?" I really, it's really hard for me to have like look at them with a straight face and tell them, "Yeah, it's not,"
It
because
it's
shit like
how
this is.
you interpret winning. To
I
me,
mean,
winning means that you
yeah,
have a clear advantage in game versus other players by the purchase you made. That's pay to win to me. But there are people on the opposite side of the spectrum that believe even cosmetics are pay to win.
I think there's a larger issue below having sort of one weapon show up like this, and that's the thing that bothers me, which is that Phoenix Labs really likes to, test out new ways of monetization or test new systems, but they don't ever seem to revert. So either all their tests have been a resounding success, or they aren't really testing as much as they're just implementing stuff. And that's what it sounds like to me at this point. The word test in Phoenix Labs terms is just the exact same as implement, regardless of what you feel about it. Which I think is a shame, because I feel like there's room for that, but they never seem to mention it in patch notes or anywhere. Um, and
Yeah.
that's the thing I think that hurts me the most, is because every time I hear like, "Hey, we are going to do a test, we want some input," it just I have no faith. It's not a test.
Yeah, I mean, with this decision, they basically said, "We're cashing in on your trust as a player, and good luck." We might do it again, we might not, and we don't know. Like that's that trust. Like they've crossed that line, and there's no going back, even if they revert it.
the worst part about the addition of this thing into the store is, I mean, it doesn't affect us, the people who've played the game for a while and know that, oh, I can just easily get it through trial store, no problem. It's the fact that it's a noob trap for new players who don't know any better. The same with like several other things in the store. Like they don't know any better. Like they'll look at that and be like, "Oh, cool! Like those look like fucking cool guns. Like I'll buy them with my money." But then then like they'll buy them and then like they won't ever realize that, oh, I can actually get it for free from the trial store. It's like
Right.
it's like it feels like it feels like some um fucking scummy business tactic that they just put in there, let unsuspecting new players come in and just give us their hard-earned money to buy something that isn't even better than the normal version of the weapon
It's
and
true.
fuck
I
them
didn't even
over.
think about that. That you can go without having the base repeaters and use Twin Suns. Like that just I didn't think about that.
It's fucking scummy. It makes the game look bad. It makes yeah, it's just I can't like, I don't understand. I don't understand why they did it.
Well,
It
it's
just
mostly
baffles
just
me.
that how are they looking at monetization, right? Like, is it that they need more, or is it that they want more? Because honestly, I'm not quite sure. And I feel like having the Hunt Pass there, and I mean, I'm buying it every single time, and I know I'm sort of the exception there. But I would assume that that is sort of the default monetization, right? That sort of that they earn the most from. But apparently, that's not the case, and in that case, I just sort of wonder um, what they're trying to do, because every single system that comes out seems to come with a new monetization scheme, except for Escalation, which I have to hand it to them, is completely free for once. So I appreciate that. But
I mean, I
yeah,
did too.
just
but the Twin Suns being in the store is like, I mean, Escalation was good and great. That, but that that alone has put like a bad taste in my mouth.
Right,
And
and we know that the Twin Suns are worth 1,000 steel marks, which are equivalent to 3 to 4 weeks of normal trials. So we're saying that it's worth what, like $16 or something like that for 3 to 4 weeks of trials. I don't know. It's just weird.
um uh I also like talked to Nudie about this. I asked him, like, why did you guys put these into the store? And his response to me was, uh if he was against it. He told me he was against it, but they made that decision because apparently they need they need to earn more money to keep the game afloat and to keep updating it, keep it alive, or something along those lines. And
Yeah.
well, I mean, do you really need to put the Twin Suns in the store?
I mean,
Like,
if that works.
the only people who are gonna buy it are new players who don't know any better. That, like, and then, I mean,
Yeah, and if they
if
stick
you have
around, they're
to
gonna feel pretty
rely,
crappy down the road when they're like, I
yeah,
could
if
have
you
just
have to,
freaking earned this.
yeah, like, you are literally like shooting yourself in the foot by having that there. And like when new players like realize, or like their friends tell them, hey, why'd you buy this? You could have just bought it, gotten it for free from the trial store. Then once they realize that later, then they'll be like, oh man, that was fucking shitty. Why? I don't
Oh
want to fucking
yeah.
spend
Could
money
you
anymore.
could you imagine them nearing in game and realizing just how easy that was to get, and they paid money for it because they were a little bit impatient?
Yeah,
I mean,
you are like,
let's be honest. That's the same thing with the sell slots for Fusion right now. But
I
the
if I can sign off, like for me personally, I don't really think that like there's. I think you guys are kind of overlooking the fact that there's value in achieving something sooner than you normally would. Maybe I like there are people like think of how many people are actually participating in trials.
It's true, true.
Like there are people that just don't care. They just want to play the Twin Suns. And like there's value in being able to buy them. Do I agree with it? No. But I mean, as far as like are they worth it, and are there other means of monetization? Absolutely. But like as far I think that the value is there if people are looking to actually do that. I don't. I think the Twin Suns are fun too. Like there's value in fun and enjoyment, and there's value in achieving it by other means, and whether that's sooner or later, um, it's up to the devs. But as far as like Tanuti goes, he's a web developer, and so he's not like part of like the main game
yeah.
development. But
I think in general there's some real questions there, because I hear the word sort of pay to win around the weapons a lot, which I feel isn't really appropriate because the weapon isn't pay to win. You're not stronger if you use this weapon, and you still have to upgrade it. So it's not like you get a locked and loaded plus 15 weapon in your inventory and can just blast all the behemoths away. That's not how this works. You are just unlocking the schematic, which in and itself may be a problem, but I am personally a little bit on the fence there. I'm just not sure
yeah,
if that is that big a problem. I'm not a fan of it because I would hate if every new weapon now comes at a price
yeah,
tag, right? And I need to unlock it. I would
absolutely.
dislike that as a player. Um,
well, Warframe already does
but
that.
yeah,
They already do that with prime weapons and stuff. You can pay to unlock it immediately, or you can do the gameplay to unlock it. The thing is you still have to be an in-game player to really use it. The thing with the Twin Suns is if it was just unlocking the schematic early, I guess I could digest that a little bit better. But you're unlocking the weapon, which again, doesn't have as much upgrading as the rest of repeaters. And not to mention, most players who are unlocking Twin Suns do not have a grasp of the game mechanics to really utilize them at all.
That's not for you to like really decide though. Like that doesn't really factor into like, am I people buying that? That doesn't matter. Like what's important is that they feel like their purchase was like their was satisfied. Like is it satisfactory, their purchase? Like that's totally subjective, and I don't think it's really part of the argument.
Right, and if they got it like 5 hours earlier than they would have otherwise, then did they get the most out of the 5 hours with the money they spent, kind of thing like that. Which, you know, up for debate, but there's more of a personal preference.
I mean, I'm afraid of the slippery slope.
Absolutely. I think everybody in this channel is. But as far as like the severity of it being, it's not the fact that it's actually there and people are buying it, because we obviously want Phoenix Labs to be successful. It's the fact of what does that mean for the future? And that was my big concern that I've always. Go ahead.
It's just the president said it sets is like, you know, we now this is this is implemented, so that means that they have basically said this is an acceptable thing that we will do possibly in the future, because, you know, it's the president that we've set. So just the fact that
it feels like. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say what I said at the start is they cashed in on our trust.
Yeah, it feels like they're. Yeah, sorry.
Oh yeah, no, I was about to say, like, I think it's more so the sort of what the act means of putting it there and the weapon actually, you know, being in the store. And yeah, we'll see what it means for the future. Honestly, that's like the biggest conclusion you can make. It's like, well, what can be, what does it mean, right?
It feels like whoever is in charge of their monetization decisions, it feels like they're completely detached from the players, the player base as a whole. And I mean, I know you need to make money, and you need to make, you know, you need to do what makes you the most money, but you can go about it in a better way that doesn't make you look bad to your players, right?
100%. Yeah, I think that's our prime. I think that's the reason why this topic is on the podcast at all, is because there's so many more things that they could have done, but they chose the Twin Suns.
Yes, but I also think it has to do with the way the game has been evolving over time. We haven't seen a lot of sort of secondary systems that they could actively benefit from monetizing, right?
Yeah.
We really only have take your weapon, slay a behemoth in the game. And it's really hard to put any price tags anywhere in there without breaking the game.
Yep.
But
Huntpass doesn't cut it, I suppose.
Yeah, I suppose that's really my big takeaway. It's just that not enough people are buying the Huntpass, or it's not earning them enough, which is a shame, because
this is something that we should talk about on future podcast, is the economy of Dauntless, because we have an overabundance of a lot of things. And now with potions, like potions was like a big blockade, and now we're gonna be able to, like, people that are playing them or playing Dauntless like consistently isn't gonna need to, you know, I've legitimately bought potions from the cash shop when they were $1, and that's money that they're not getting anymore. And so we'll see what I think the economy of Dauntless is a huge liability. So and it plays into a lot of different things.
Well, actually, if you want to talk about that now, we can, since next.
Right, we are in free talk.
Yeah,
I think. I mean, it's been 2.5 hours. I do have things, so I'm. Yeah, right. I would like to. I'd like to make it a focus or something, if that's fine. If you guys want to talk about it in free time, I'll just catch the phone.
Okay.
Okay. Then what topics?
Any pressing topics right now while we get in free talk?
I'm more than okay continuing the conversation another time. I need to get some stuff done as well, so I wouldn't oppose.
Yeah, in the next couple minutes, I definitely need to bow out. So
Yeah, we can table the monetization and economy discussion. That's a pretty lengthy.
Yep, I think so too.
Okay, then what?
My big thing is just that establishment, a open establishment of a baseline for weapon balance. I think having that will allow to have direct conversations and have meaningful discussions about how the community views balance and how Phoenix Lab wants to direct that balance. But until that happens, it's really hard to talk about how can trials be improved. How can, I mean, there's mechanical things, there's small things like escalations and trials, there's feature improvements, but you can't talk about the balance of those modes or the effect of the weapons in those modes without
Yeah.
first establishing that baseline.
Right. I
Oh
wanted
wait.
to bring.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Pray out. Never mind.
I just wanted to talk about basically summarize what my current objectives are with the game, which is I'm trying to look for a new main weapon. I lost my charm with X. The changes that have been made, I have to summarize, which is basically three main things. Um, Relentless and Grim Onslaught being added, I'm not a fan of because it basically made Axe a ranged weapon. And the fact that the ranged attack that is way safer deals more damage than the closer and more risky attack just completely didn't make sense to me. The second thing being that the Axe was made slightly faster along with Hammer. I think the slower weapons were sped up, but not the other weapons. So it felt like they were just normalizing slower weapons to make them faster, which didn't make sense to me. And the third thing was that this patch, they made it so there's no more overcharging. You cannot overcharge the Axe. You're guaranteed a level 3 resolve. And that doesn't make sense to me. So I just can't get myself to play the Axe right now. And I've tried out Sword. I think I'll stick with Sword for now. But I'm just, yeah. So that's my current position.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think if there were any weapons that needed reworks, it'd be the axe and the warpike. Like I'm totally in favor of those weapons just totally getting like a lot more love.
As far as I'm concerned, I just want to see them this year improve on, as I said before, developing and making meaningful behemoth encounters and creating strategic choice amongst weapon specials and mods and cells, and yeah, just adding a layer of, we need more depth. The way the game is now is, I mean, you can argue it's a strength of the game for it to be simple and easy to get into, but I would like to see more depth be added for those people like us who have been in at the end game for so long, and we just want something fresh and new. So I want them to challenge the norms, flip the meta on its head, flip player expectations on their head. Whatever they can do, I want to see them do. So yeah, and yeah, that's my stance. Unless you guys want to talk or speculate about stuff in the roadmap, like Weapon 8 and shit.
Well, this is just tying back to my work on the Gamepedia, but still Dauntless related, I guess.
Mhm.
I don't know how to segue into this one because it's so weird, but like as the Gamepedia, Guardian, I really try to update the wiki as often as possible, and one of the things I'm really trying to push for next time I have the chance is push for like numbers, because I feel like number like it's a thing that we should have had a long time ago. There is no reason why we don't have them. and the long strides that I take for improving the game PD, like when I think it was Shade was running it before Creature Tech took over. Uh, she didn't allow any non-official data on there. But with Creature Tech here, we've been allowed a lot more freedom, so we've been able to add some of the spreadsheets that for people like Ket made. So we have numbers, we have some calculation, we have some formulas. So the next thing I'm hoping to push for are like drop rates and actual numbers.
Hmm. Yeah. Should I elaborate a little bit more, or?
Well, you can go if you want. We have free talk.
All right.
Okay,
Well, in that case, I am going to take my leave now because I do have to do some stuff still.
Okay.
Yeah. If there's any
Take it easy,
closing
dude.
remarks, now would be a
Cheers,
good
Sarah.
time.
Yeah. So you guys have a good chat, and we'll speak each other next
Alright.
time. It was a good chat, guys.
Yeah.
Take care, Sarah.
Yeah,
Take
take
care.
care.
Hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
does anyone have anything to add before?
I mean, I could elaborate a little bit more on what I mean by strategic weapon choice. I mean, strategic choice amongst weapon specials and mods and whatnot. If you'd like, but I don't know if
You
everybody
sound
can
like
hear
you're
us.
dying. That's what I'm thinking right now.
I am. I am.
Should we save it
It's-
for next time
Um,
so you can go to sleep? What's the time right now for you?
4:14 a.m.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
feel
you might want to.
you might want to go to
Yeah.
bed.
We can tack it on to the
Yeah.
next time.
If anyone's
Yeah,
okay with
I
that.
mean, yeah. As far as like time for another one, January is pretty busy for me.
Oh yeah. I'm definitely
Uh,
not gonna be January. That's not gonna happen
Probably
with
have
other
to do
stuff.
February.
Yeah. We'll figure it out. Don't worry.
Yeah, I'd love to be back. Hopefully everybody enjoyed watching and listening in. Yeah, thanks for having
it was
me.
a good discussion.
Yeah.
Oh, people want to hear me talk about Reddit. We'll let Reggie go, and then I'll talk about Reddit real quick.
Yeah, I'll have to bow out.
Thanks for being here, Ravi.
All right.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Take it
See ya.
easy, dude.
Thanks.
Bye.
Later.
Well,
Okay, so
Get it out of
Free
your
talk.
system.
real quick, Reddit, you guys ready? Chat, you.
Oh,
fuck
God.
Reddit.
Reddit is a horrible fucking platform and should never be fucking used. It is dumb. It does hive mentality. I mean, I could go on for hours blasting the
Is-
shit that is
okay,
that.
well,
says-
This is why I turned the
This-
stream on to
This is
18
getting
plus.
pretty bad
This is why I turned the stream on to
already.
18 plus.
This is
all right.
this is Aodin 100% right now.
Okay, let's just in a nutshell.
In
let's
a
just all
nutshell,
agree,
there is
Reddit
a
is
hive
horseshit.
mentality. Yeah, and
Reddit is horseshit.
the problem is when you look at the visibility, and I have to give hands down a lot of praise to the admins of the Reddit of that sub.
That
They're
would be-
trying to do
yeah.
their darndest to like make it usable, to make everybody happy, to make it a good platform, and I don't knock them one bit. The issue is no matter what filters you put in, no matter what you do, when a new player or a new Redditor sees that sub, they're going to see memes and they're going to see Fashion Slayer. And that's not all bad, except when it's like half of the front page that you're scrolling down. You have to actually search for the discussions. You have to actually search for the
I
feedback.
feel like
And then if you don't go with the casual crowd, if you don't feed into the mass majority, which a lot of my posts don't, then you get people like in my situation where I have 4 people following every post I make and downvoting it as soon as I post it.
see, I feel like they should add a filter to the main page where you can just, so it's a universal filter for whenever you log onto your account, where it's just filter out all memes and fashion slayers, or
Well,
Right.
it's
Well,
it's
they do
not
have that
about the
feature.
individual filter. Yeah, it's not about the individual filter. It's about new players and current players who maybe didn't know the subreddit existed that now come onto the subreddit and that's all they see.
Well, and one of the big problems with Reddit is that you have a downvote upvote system, which impacts the visibility of posts. So if you don't conform with what other people are interested in, then no one will ever see your post.
yeah.
fuck Reddit.
Yeah, let's end on that note if everyone's okay with that.
Okay, yeah, I'm good with that.
You got
I
it out of your
my-
system? You're
My
good?
piece out.
Never ever go there for any.
Go to the
actual
Gamepedia.
Intellectual discussion.
Yeah, go to the
It's
Gamepedia,
Discord.
look up a streamer, go to the Discord. There's plenty of people that will give instant feedback and instant information back to you. The subreddit is usually not the place.
It's just unfortunate because I'm hearing other companies doing the same transition of we have to take our forums down for one reason or another, and so we're going to transition to Discord and Reddit, and it just
It's
does.
a cost.
It's not working.
Let's
Five
just take Reddit,
5 minutes silence for the Dauntless forums.
Let's just take Reddit out back to the slaughterhouse
And leave it
put
there.
it down. Put it down.
It's just
Yeah.
oh, God. Rest in peace.
I guess we cut off for here. Everyone good?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think that's how Huntpass is. How behemoths basically haven't changed in the past year or two. I haven't seen any changes. We talked about that.
Let's talk about evasive blast not triggering half the time.
Okay.
Being the only
Unresponsive
only
controls.
double input in the.
Oh my gosh.
Whew.
Okay.
You should go to
Yep.
bed, Lucian.
I was a fan of the attack speed cell nerfs.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
No.
I should go to bed, but I'm enjoying trashing on Reddit too much.
The AS nerf was half the benefit. It was the halfway mark of fixing weapon balance. The problem is they didn't fix anything.
I was hopeful for the future of balance when they nerfed attack speed, and then they buffed base attack speed for heavy weapons only, and I was just immediately demoralized.
That just
because
put the repeaters like
they're
way
trying
back.
to normalize weapons, and I was just I couldn't. But Warpike buffs, I was kind of a fan of.
Okay.
I mean, we knew they were weak, so it's good that they're useful even without wound. Sword parry. I mean, I think we already talked about it, but
Yeah.
this was my in my yearly reflection of things that happened in the game. Sword parry still is pretty a good concept, although it's way too forgiving and the window's way too large, which we touched upon in a different podcast.
Yeah.
And yeah, being able to fight 7 or 8 behemoths without a loading screen in Escalation, I also enjoyed that. And those are the things that I did appreciate, but on top of all of this bashing that we've done.
Yeah. Okay, let's if anyone I need to go to bed. Even though it's only 9 here.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a good talk.
Yeah, we should do one another time. Let's just thanks for being here, everyone, and also people in chat.
Yeah, it was a good talk.
Thank you for having me.
Anyone wanna sign us off?
Clear skies, all slayers. May 2020